Welcome to Our Soul Whisper with Cathi Belmont and co-host Dr. Pat, a sacred space for self-discovery, healing, and transformation. At the heart of Our Soul Whisper is the sacred truth. When we pause and listen inward, the soul always speaks. This show offers a safe, empowering space where those whispers are heard, honored, and lovingly guided into full expression. Each episode invites you to be curious about yourself and the reality you're in, while gently reminding you that you are exactly where you need to be. Let today's message settle in your heart. Maybe even journal about it. And if something resonates, peace, clarity, or insight, pass it along to someone whose soul might be calling for the same. Keep listening inward. Your soul knows the way. Our Soul Whisper starts now. Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you to this amazing episode. I am the co-host here with the most incredible Cathi Belmont. But first, before we go any further, I want to tell you that this is a show. What you're going to hear, Cathi provides solutions. And what I mean by that is solutions to all of you out there as a spiritual coach and so much more. The topics we talk about are topics that, one, show up in life, two, that she has experience in working with people on. So today, right out of the gate, this is really important. Finding your true north, the walls in between. All right, Cathi, this is a good one. And it does really require a bit of an explanation, especially from where you come from. I'll say, begin the journey for us today.
Yeah. So, thanks everyone. Thanks for being here. And I'm excited to talk about this because it's recognizing those misalignments, like when we just feel something's off. And what I'd like to do is really have a conversation today about how to recognize these misalignments in general, and then looking at different aspects of our lives. And so we have these something feels off, which can seem maybe a little bit easier to at least identify. What can be challenging sometimes, it's what's underneath. What are those blocks and obstacles that are really keeping those misalignments, those something just doesn't feel right in place? So that's what I'd really like to talk about. And then just a little exciting news for the next episode, really talk about how we can then clear all that. So we'll kind of get through what's holding us back, and then next week, how we can really start living that life that we really want, that we're really yearning to express and be creative in. So, just a general level, some of these signs are where you may find you're just living on autopilot. You're just going through the day. Maybe if work today looks so different, but say you're in an office, you get up, you go to work, come home, cook dinner, do what you need to do, and go to bed. And so it's like you're not really an active participant in your life. Or maybe people ask you, so how you doing? And you find yourself saying, well, I'm all right, or, I'm really stressed, and you find yourself saying these, but maybe you're really not identifying with what's going on, or you're getting these gut instincts, but you're not listening, or you're taking the back seat to things. You're putting yourself second to things in your life. And so a lot of how this can look is, say, maybe in your work, maybe you're just constantly thinking about, I just don't want to be here anymore. And yet the next thought is you talk yourself out of it. Well, I just should be grateful for this. Or, a lot of people, would love a job like mine, or we feel more alive talking about other possibilities rather than what you're currently doing. Or it could even be feeling like maybe you like what you do, however, the environment you're in doesn't seem to match. And so that's kind of how maybe out of alignment things can feel. But if you think about how would you like to feel? What would alignment feel like in your work? Maybe you really feel connected to what you're doing and you really feel like you're bringing some meaningfulness into what you're doing. You're able to bring in the creativity that makes you feel so alive. And then there's relationships. Maybe we're starting to feel like we were once in this role and we've just outgrown it. It's just not who we are anymore. Or, I think a lot of us can relate to, we avoid those difficult conversations that seem to either rock the boat or everything seems good. I don't want to disturb the peace. Or we really start feeling responsible for everyone else around us, maybe their comfort or what they like rather than our own. And so what alignment can feel like in relationships when we kind of get past, those obstacles is you're able to express your thoughts and feelings more openly. And it may not be, it's not at the expense of, but it could be, as simple as, I just don't really want to go to that restaurant today. And it may turn into a compromise. However, you've given yourself a voice. You're not giving it over automatically. And the mutuality, this care and support goes both ways. It's not just one person always giving and one person always receiving. So that's what alignment can really feel like, and that's where we can get to when we start identifying where things feel off.
Yeah, because being out of alignment does not feel great.
No, no.
And we get signs of that. And we're great ignorers. Like, you know what I mean? Like, not denial, but it's great to just like ignore it. That stomach ache you always have, a headache you always have,
Yeah,
or you don't pick up the phone when Mary calls, or whatever that is,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Or you just tired of cooking chicken cacciatore, whatever that comes, whatever form it comes in, it's
Yeah.
always a sign and indicator, isn't it?
It is. It is. And that's what we get to, a lot into coaching, and especially the spiritual life coaching, is we get at what's behind the reason why you don't want to call Mary? What's that energy? What are you not saying, or what are you not admitting, or what is it that you're really not honest about? And it sounds, like, well, what's the big deal? But those things add up. I mean, that energy just grows and grows, and it's really not just. I'm going to say it doesn't really just be in one part of our lives. It's we can look at all parts of our life and see, well, where am I doing that somewhere else? And so in the coaching, we really get to what's behind that for you. What's the real reason? Not maybe what you're telling yourself, but what's really underneath there.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fear, worthiness, some of those deeper wounds or experiences that we're saying, nope, I'm not going to go there. And so what's beautiful too is bringing in that spiritual piece.
Mhm.
And it's not, I don't work with people that are any religious affiliation. It's really people who want to get to that deeper meaning and connection. And bringing in that piece of spirituality can be so enriching because you're allowing yourself to open up to some other possibilities that you're like, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
never thought about that before. Wow, what an awareness there. And so it's really bringing that in. And so really continuing with these misalignments, maybe in our environment or our lifestyle, it could be maybe you're just living somewhere that just doesn't feel like home anymore. Um, or you're feeling disconnected from things that you love to do, like activities or things in your community or things that mattered to you. And what alignment can feel like there is that you can feel more moments of peace and contentment. You're not going against the grain, trying to make something fit that just doesn't
Yeah.
fit anymore. And you start feeling engaged in your own life.
Yeah. I think it's
Um,
so important to pinpoint these. And then, also figure it out. For a really long time, Kathy, I dreaded Sundays and
mhm.
until I was able to figure out why. Now,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with Sunday, and it certainly wasn't about church. When I was a
Right.
very young child, at age 6 years old, I was sent off to Catholic boarding school.
Mm,
And every Sunday we would pile in the car and I would get dropped off,
mm,
right? Unless, of course, they forgot to pick me up on Friday. But I had to trace that back to why that was happening. And then I
right.
realized I'm not a 6 year old child anymore.
Right.
Sundays are amazing. Now,
Yeah.
some people cannot stand Mondays. Whatever that looks like for you,
Hmm.
what you're saying is
Yeah.
you got to become aware.
Yeah. And it's becoming aware, Dr. Pat, of that 6-year-old who may be still in that, maybe stuck in the past like that. And we're still allowing that 6-year-old to make decisions to where she just doesn't realize there's something better. She's not aware of that. And so,
Exactly.
along with spiritual coaching, we can bring that integrated piece in too. How do we want to acknowledge that piece of ourselves that still dreads those Sundays and has this attachment to what's going to happen?
Mhm.
And to let that 6-year-old know it's okay and that we're we're the big person here.
Yeah.
We know, and we can allow you to be that 6-year-old that just wanted to play
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just wanted to. So it's bringing that in as well.
But it's the
Um,
game changer. Spiritual
yeah,
life coaching is the game changer. And I want to say this. I was on an earlier show today and I quoted something from the big book. Now, I say this for people to redefine this in your own way, because what Cathi and I refer to is we talk about spirituality. What that means, it's whatever that means to you, really.
yeah,
But in the big book, in the second chapter, we agnostics, which is not about agnostics, as a matter of fact, they mention God like 122 times or something. But there's a quote in the book, and it says, God is either everything. And again, you can replace God like I did. God is
mhm.
either everything. God is either everything or nothing. God either is or isn't. What shall I choose? So what are they saying? Spirit is either everything or nothing. And so what does that mean? That means having a coaching program that doesn't have a spiritual element doesn't really honor that phrase. And that
Yeah,
is a powerful phrase in all of the 12 steps.
yeah,
Why? Because we know that it is the game changing factor. It
yeah,
is like the X factor plus a million. There are a lot of things we can do in life without it. But when we add that element into our coaching practice, which means into our change practice, which means into our behavioral practice, that's the magic. That's the miracle, isn't it?
it is. And it's really getting in touch with a lot of times we've outgrown what was spiritual to us. I can remember I grew up as a Roman Catholic, grew up, through the Catholic faith. And, I remember really early on saying, okay, yeah, I don't really connect with this, but I'll go through the motions. However, there was always this magical part, especially on Christmas Eve and the candlelight. And
Oh,
it was such a magic to me that I held on to that. But where the spiritual practice comes in, I just realized it just didn't fit for me anymore. And I
yeah,
began my journey into, well, what really does? And that was really part of honoring myself. And, I could have talked myself out of it and said, yeah, well, I don't connect, but everybody else seems to. So let me just go with it. That's the difference. That's where we can stop
yeah,
and really ask ourselves, am I really honoring myself here? Do I really enjoy it? Am I
exactly.
really inspired?
Yeah.
And so,
But that gives us the freedom then to really say, I can work with this spiritual life coach, Cathi Belmont,
yes.
because
Yeah.
you have that opinion of it. People can
Yeah.
work with you and not be concerned. We're not going to talk
Right.
about this. And yet, the
Yeah.
most powerful element in transformation is what you do. It is extremely difficult with my 36 years in recovery to do it without that.
Yeah. And a lot of times in when we talk about spirituality, I'll jump to kind of some of the obstacles
Yes,
that, like, you know,
please, to get to them.
we have these misalignments, and then we say, okay, we're out, but what's keeping us from that? And I'll jump to spirituality because, you know, we think that we should have it figured out or that we should do it on our own. And, you know, you get to spirituality and what does that mean to you? And what is that deeper meaning for you? I know for me, it goes to something to my higher self. You know, my brain works in a certain way, and I have beliefs that it's limited as far as what it can really come up with. I think it just, you know, my higher self has the bigger perspective. And so if I can open up to those possibilities and allow that bigger perspective, that's what keeps me going. And that higher perspective may send me some physical support to say, okay, Cathi, we're here, but you know, go meet up with this person. They have something that's going to support you. And so that's how it can work. It's really opening yourself up and then allowing whatever comes in to receive to direct you to what you need. And spiritual life coaching, I just, you know, I find it where it's changed my life in a sense that my conversations are different. You know, I, even when I'm not coaching, I speak to family, friends from that perspective. You know, what is it that interests you about that? I'm gauging my conversations differently. And it's really awesome to see the results of that. So it really, it brings fullness to the client's life as well as to mine.
Yeah. And also, doesn't it also help accelerate overcoming those obstacles? Because didn't Einstein say it, Cathi? I'm going to paraphrase Einstein, but didn't Einstein say, oh, by the way, we cannot solve the problem at the level it was created?
Yeah.
And so people are like, what does Einstein mean? Well, we know what he meant. We know that Einstein didn't become Einstein without a spiritual tone in his mindset. And that's really what we're talking about. And so many others. We
Yeah.
have to leave room for solving or getting to solution in ways that we hadn't thought about. But when we think about the many, 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 many people that have overcome obstacles, they do have a common factor. And it doesn't mean they believe in God. They talk about the universe. They talk about whatever that
Mhm.
is. It
Yeah.
is a higher vibration of something that is included in the solution and included in your work.
Yeah. And you know that's a wonderful lead in because when you talk about work, some objections that may come up in our minds is, you know, I'm going to jump to what do I have to offer here? You know, we
Yeah.
think that maybe, oh my gosh, there's so many coaches out there, or I know I had that question. I know in me the fire
Yeah.
was burning deeply. It's like, this is what I want to do. And that second thought came in, well, what do I have to offer? I'm coming in late in the game. Everyone's been doing this. And I was reminded that my life, my experience, my flavor is unique. And when I think about the teachers and the people that I listen to and that I learned from, I get bits and pieces from everyone. There's certain people that I just really resonate and love to listen to. But yeah, searching for answers to some of my questions, sometimes a teacher can say it such in a certain way that I've heard thousands of times. And I think it's two ways. One, I'm ready, and two, the way that they say it. So it's honoring what you bring, honoring the fact that there are billions of people out there and we all have different tastes, experiences, we're all on different levels of learning. And so we have something to offer. You have something to offer to someone. And I like to believe that if we're given something to give, there's someone on the other side that's there to receive. Dr. Pat, you may have said that to me, but it's a beautiful thing to remember
Yeah.
because it's that give and receiving. So one of the things that coaching does is it helps us to reframe, and that's what we're doing. We're taking these objections, that's what's keeping us stuck and stopped from doing
Yeah.
what we really want to do. What are those quiet moments are they saying to us when we're washing the dishes? I'd really rather be doing this. I really would rather be more in tune with people I can relate to, or whatever that is for you. Um, it's listening to those moments and then what are the objections and reframing them. How can you look at things differently? When we look at relationships, we may say, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but maybe, you don't want to hurt someone or it's easier not to say anything. You know, by not saying anything, you're not honoring yourself and you're not honoring your relationship. Because on the short term, it may seem, okay, things are at peace, but, you know, 9 times out of 10, that other person or those other people are feeling it too. Because as this planet, as we get more in touch with energy, we can all feel it. I don't think we can hide much anymore. We think we can, but but those are the
No.
kind of things we tell ourselves. So the reframing of that is, again, this pretending it doesn't it creates distance. And so to be able to look at it like, okay, well, I want to say something now because this relationship is important to me enough where I don't want to create that distance. Or maybe, people expect you to be a certain way. You need time. Another reframing is you need time to grow into yourself. Other people need time to get used to the new
Oh,
you.
yeah. Oh,
However, that's not, so those aren't reasons to hold yourself back.
yeah.
Allow yourself that time.
Hmm. Yeah. Kathy, that is one of the greatest challenges in people that enter recovery. I don't know if you knew that. Of course there are other challenges, but
Yeah.
that's not the thing that really causes this, uh dissonance. It's here you are and you're starting to change and you go out and you tell people you're going to change and of course they don't
Hmm.
believe you because they don't
Yeah.
see it.
Right.
And you go down a rabbit hole about it when you think, how am I going to convince them? No, it is not our job to convince other people. It's what you're saying. You
Hmm.
know what you're doing, you know what you're changing. But in those programs, 9 times out of 10, Kathy, you have to let your past people, environments go.
Hmm. Yeah.
You really do. I mean,
Yeah.
I moved clear across the country.
Hmm.
That's what I did. I mean, I'm not saying you all have to do that, but you
Right.
understand, we learn a
Hmm.
different level of discernment and we get this intuitive insight, and that is spiritual. I believe
Yeah.
intuition and intuitive insight. And that's
Hmm.
what is blocked when we don't do what you're talking about today.
Yeah. And it's when we allow ourselves to become aware of these, where it feels a little off and what's in our way, and as we work through that, that's our kind of work. That's what we do. And once we clear that energy, life says, oh my gosh, now I can come on in. All we have to do is get out of our own way, and we allow that. And so, to your point, Dr. Pat, when you talk about, making the changes within yourself, and you are solid and secure, and yes, this is who I want to be today, life is going to take care of the rest. And that's where we
Yeah,
hear a lot about we don't have to
yeah,
worry about the how.
yeah,
We just put out there. So it can be very powerful. And I think sometimes when we talk about change and what's in our way, it can feel so overwhelming. And we
yeah,
think, okay, well, once I get through this, now what?
yeah,
But it's really once we clear that energy and we get clear about what it is that we like. Um, I made a decision about my work, and there was at one point where I realized I wasn't fully in. I was still had my foot out into safety and security. And I became aware of that. And I was like, oh, okay, that's why. That's why things aren't moving and grooving. And once I said, okay, I'm going all in. this is what I'm doing, opportunities showed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I, I received invitations and just and my energy, it was all in. So it
Yeah.
can be very powerful, just those little that we've talked about before, those little degrees of change.
Yeah. That's all it takes. Cathi,
Yeah.
thank you for today. How do people work with you? How do they find out more about you? And thank you so much. Leave us with your closing message.
Yeah. So you can find me on oursowhisper.com and everything is there. You're also welcome to email me at oursowhisper@gmail. I just want to say that, life gives us those subtle signs, and it's learning to listen to those.
Yeah.
And it's recognizing that amidst the fear, we can take those steps anyway to move us in. So next time we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about getting now we're aware of what's holding us back. Let's get honest about it. Let's get firm and stand behind what we're aware of what we made a decision for, and then take those aligned steps to being who we want to be in this world.
Yeah. Like I like to
So
say, game on.
game
Cathi,
on.
game on. Thank you so much for everything. Again, give out your website one last time.
Yeah, oursowhisper.com.
I love it. For those of you out there, this is part one. We're going to do a part two. Why? Because you're worth it. And it's like Matt
Yeah.
James says to me a long time ago, Pat, whatever you think you are, you're more than that. And I'm going to say that to all of you. But I want to say something to Cathi. I didn't get here without a spiritual coach, Cathi.
Mm-hmm.
Doing this alone is beyond daunting. Thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Our Soul Whisper with Cathi and Dr. Pat. Tune in every first and third Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Take a moment now to breathe in and reflect on today's message. If it brought you peace, clarity, or insight, let it settle in your heart and maybe even journal about it. Remember to like and share this episode with someone who's ready to listen within. May our soulful echoes ripple outward, awakening awareness and deep remembrance. If this show touched something within you, share it. Let's create a world where most of us pause, listen inward, and allow our light to shine. Visit OurSoulWhisper.com for more.